Welcome to the Freight Agent Insider Podcast, hosted by Levi Van Pay.
And welcome in Freight Fanatics to another episode of Freight Agent Insider. I'm Levi, your host, coming to you from the land of beer and cheese, the tundra of freeze. Go Pack Go. Reminder to anybody out there listening, please like, subscribe, find us on TikTok at Freight Agent Insider. Every Monday, new episode with a all-star freight agent. Today is no different. We have, I consider, a good friend, an all-star freight agent of RKC Logistics, Ryan Suydam, a.k.a. Suydam Skinny. How's it going, Ryan?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me in. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be fun, man. Very happy to have you. Definitely one of the first people I've wanted on Freight Agent Insider, so I'm glad we're finally connecting a couple episodes in.
That's great. Let's get it on.
Let's do it, man. Well, diving right into it, how did you get your start in freight? How'd you end up here, man?
Yeah, so my first job out of college, I was working for GMAC Financing. I was doing wholesale floor plan audits and repoing cars for GMAC, which was a lot of fun. It did not pay well at all. And back in 98, I think it was, GMAC went through a shift. They wanted me to move to Charlotte. I was like, no way for what I was making. So I went to some job sites and saw some postings for being a freight broker. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I applied at C.H. Robinson and was hired in 98 or 99 as just a dumb freight guy. I did not know the difference between a dry van and a refrigerated trailer. I knew nothing. And so I was trained by two really good guys. Shout out to them, Bert Gavi and Jeff Story. Both of those guys took me underneath their wings and taught me the groundwork of becoming a freight agent. And I was put on some real low-hanging fruit type freight, potting soil and bottled water, because it's hard to mess that stuff up. And so I was there for almost 5 years. My first large account that I landed was Blue Ridge Paper, and that was an eye-opener to me. That turned into a multi-plant facility that I was leading the charge with at the time. And what I recognized after doing that for about a year was the amount of business that I was bringing in was not matching up to my base and salary. And so I got kind of tired of that. And I wasn't real thrilled with the culture, more along the lines of in-office fighting over customers. I didn't like that whole idea. It was just my
You liked the pizza parties, though, right? Ping pong tables?
Pizza parties. Oh, yeah. Pizza and ping pong. That was what sold me.
Been there.
So I left there, and my wife at the time was from Maine, and we moved to Maine. I took a job in a leadership role with a company called SPC Transport. They are an asset-based company. There was one account that they were brokering at the time. It was Poland Springs Water, and the owner brought me in and said, let's go. So it was a great run. Probably 9.5 years. We built out 59 million in sales. I mean, we killed it. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about managing people. I learned about managing dispatchers. Found myself managing private lives as a department head, which I wasn't real thrilled with, but it was a great run. I got remarried in 2011 and moved to New Hampshire in a sales role for tech transport. took a significant pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
And about 5 years in, I really started seeing the writing on the wall that 55,000 a year plus commission was not going to get it. And the thing that really opened my eyes up is the operations people who were covering my loads. Well, they weren't bad people; they were just overpaying on the
Mm-hmm.
freight, which in turn uh, took my bonuses down. So I cut a deal with them in the fall of 16. I was their only freight agent. It was a little rough at first. The first year, it was up and down. But I knew I could do it because I knew I had the drive to succeed. And I incorporated into my business RKC Logistics, I think in 2018. And I was doing really well. I was doing it all by myself. Up until about 2 years ago, my wife told me, she's like, you're not going to make it to your mid 50s, late 50s if you don't get some help. So I hired an operations guy, Jake Mavity. He's a great addition to our team. He handles all operations, allows me to focus on sales. We live in the job site delivery world. Anything that delivers to a job site, we can probably run circles around most companies just with our standard operating procedures, our communication, um, the number of people you have to juggle speaking to on every load. So we have that down. That's probably our niche. And then up until this past summer, I was with Tech, and I just wasn't really happy with where I was going, the opportunity. Um, some of the things that I was asking for to be more productive just weren't a priority. So I started looking around, and I interviewed with three companies. They interviewed me. I interviewed them. Looked at their TMSs and narrowed it down to two, and ultimately chose Armstrong Transport Group. So I transitioned my book of business, which was an interesting season this past early spring, to Armstrong. I started February 3rd. I would say getting into that, if anyone is out there listening to this and they are a W-2 with a no non-solicit or a no non-compete, or if they are with a company as a 1099 looking to move their book of business, I really think that there's some keys that people really need to focus on. I've talked about this online, and there's 8 tips to transitioning your business. And one is to evaluate who you're looking at. Look at their technology, look at their financial strength, look at their leadership culture. Don't give up your company, your book of business information until you're solidified around that and you've signed off on an NDA. You want to look at a deal that benefits you long term, not on the short term. Me personally, I made a 5-year commitment to Armstrong, and my goal is by the 5th year to have grown by 3 to 4%, 3 to 4 times what I currently am at. That's my goal.
Awesome.
And so, another piece of the importance of transitioning is having a conversation with your customers. People do business with people and not corporate logos. So the customers that you are dealing with most likely are people who trust you and you can have private conversations with. Conversations that evolve around, hey, if it were to look like something different where I transition my book of business to another company, would you follow me? Do you see any roadblocks in signing a credit app to another company? Those
That's
are the
right.
things that you need to ask on the front end, because you don't want to have made a decision and then find out, 30% of your customers are not moving. So in my case, I was very fortunate. Every customer moved except one. And that was more just a conflict of interest versus, them not moving to move a book of business. So that's important. Be prepared and to give notice. And by what I mean by that is in my case, I preempted some things. I had to give a 30-day written notice. And when I gave that 30-day written notice, I had about 80% of all of my customers uh, signed credit apps back in my hand. Something could go sideways. If my former company decided to unplug me, um, I was ready to go.
And they will do that. That's a very important point.
Yeah, and I don't want to get in the weeds, particularly what happened, but you just have to be ready for things that you do not think are coming.
That's
A
right.
perfect example is I thought in my case, my last day at Tech Transport was on 2-2. So on 2-3, we were ready to go with Armstrong. And what I thought on 2-3 would happen was happening weeks prior, where sales reps from Tech Transport were calling on my customers saying, hey, you don't need to go with Ryan. You can stay with us. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way because here I am, I'm
Absolutely.
still doing business under the Tech banner. And I had to bite my tongue. It was a season of I just had to focus on moving forward and not looking back in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ryan, on that. And for anybody that doesn't know, I am the director of agent development at a company called Select Transport Group. Ironically, was found the founder of Armstrong Transport Group, Chris Cobb, is the president of Select. So Ryan and I are kind of interconnected in that way. I lay in bed some nights, Ryan, and I think, man, I wish I could have recruited you over here. Armstrong, I am going to wait 5 years. 5 years, I'm coming for Suydam Skinny after that. Ryan, there are, you've come from the W-2 side of the business, and there are pros and cons to the agent model. You are in a unique position where I think you can kind of talk to the individuals out there that are W-2 brokers right now contemplating a potential move to the 1099 agent side. I'm talking to somebody right now who is on that side of the fence. I talk about a lot of situations on LinkedIn. Yesterday, I mentioned a strange commission tier W-2 structure. There's a million different ones out there. I won't go into it right now. Ryan, I guess just real simple, what are the pros and cons of?
Yeah. So let me just touch on one other thing before I jump into that. One of the most important things that I have learned over business and outside of business is moving with grace. And what I mean by that is being kind to people regardless of how they are to you. I could have done things a little bit differently, but when I left, but I always want to uh, treat people, even if they treat me the wrong way, treat them with kindness and grace. And I think that goes a long ways, not just in business, but in life. It's an important life lesson. But
You
to your
embody
point,
that too. You
yeah,
embody that. You were one of the people that reached out to me as I was moving to Select, which was a difficult period, and you checked in on me, called me out of the blue, checked in on me, making sure everything was okay. So I appreciate that, man, and you definitely do embody that.
sure. Yeah, it was great. Some great conversations. I think to answer your question about transitioning to 1099, I think what most people don't understand is that the biggest negative is you're always on call, especially when it's just you at the beginning. Um, you know, what sets you apart from the competition is whether you pick up the phone at 8 o'clock at night when your customer calls. I just had a conversation this morning with a consignee in Brooklyn, New York. It was the first delivery. I always like to put a personal touch after the first time we go into somewhere, I made a call. This happened to be the owner of the company. And what I thought was going to be a 3-minute phone call turned into a 20-minute call talking about how the former broker who has handled the last 6 loads just goes dark. He doesn't know where his freight is. He asks for updates and he doesn't get updates. So I think the biggest thing is availability. Being available when your phone rings, you've got to pick it up. And every time you do that, that creates trust with a client. And in my case, I have customers that have followed me. I have a customer in Connecticut I'm going to see here next month. They've been with me 21 years. And, they get calls all the time like everybody does. But the service that I provide, when they text me on a Friday night and say, hey, we need another load to Arizona, a team tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, that's when you go into action. And when you start doing that over and over and over and build repetition upon repetition, you're going to start creating a book of business for yourself. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing, having conversations with your wife or significant other and saying, hey, when 6:30 hits and we're sitting down having dinner, if the phone rings from my customer in California, I got to pick it up.
That's right. That's right. And that, I guess that could be considered kind of a con, but the pro side of that is when you make yourself available to your customers literally 24/7, the commission that you're going to see once you build those relationships, Ryan, like you say, you build your book of business, is going to be substantial in comparison to a salary and maybe a small commission.
Absolutely. I mean, it's night and day. And, at the beginning, you just have to hustle. Man, when you're in this in the beginning, man, you eat what you kill. And if you're not killing it, you ain't eating. And so you just have to get up an hour earlier to prospect. You got to get creative on how you're going to get in front of people, whether that's donuts in the morning, whether that's sending personal notes, thanking them for 10 minutes of their time over the phone. You have to reinvent yourself on how you can be different. How are you going to stand out?
Yeah, and if we're talking strictly about pros and cons of becoming a 1099 agent, you're a business owner. These are kind of, in a sense, cons. And I actually do want to talk more about that and dive deeper into that, Ryan. I guess they could be considered cons in that you're not off the clock at 5 o'clock at night. You stay on the clock. We always talk about the pros of becoming an agent. Everybody knows you can make unlimited amounts of money. You can have a really nice boat and a great car and a great house, and there's all of that. But I think a lot of people just see the people that are talking about it on LinkedIn and the
sacrifice. I mean, for sure. I mean,
let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's a sacrifice that my family makes. I have a wonderful wife who understands the importance of what I do and, the services that I provide. So she gets it. You have to pick and choose, when to do things and when not to do things. You have to, you know, do your extracurricular activities around when you think you're not going to get a phone call. And, uh, wherever you go, you got to take your laptop with you, and, you just have to be prepared because you never know. You're going to get that one call, that prospect that you've been after for 5 or 6 months. And I'm telling you, the time and time again, the first load is the fire drill load. It's at 5:15 on a Friday on July 3rd. And, you're ready to go out the door and here's your opportunity. And, here's even a perfect example. Back to Blue Ridge Paper. When I went up to Blue Ridge Paper with my manager, the director of transportation was so arrogant, he put his feet up on the desk and he said, I don't use brokers. And we only use asset-based. And I was like, there's no way you're doing 3,000 loads a month and not using a broker. Well, fast forward about 4 months after that conversation, we get a phone call from their Athens, Georgia co-packing plant. It was a July 3rd, and it was a Friday afternoon, and they were 2 loads that they had to get down to Orlando, Florida. And we lost money on both loads. We took them, we lost money, but we knew the big picture was if we can cover this, we are in.
I recently did a show with Brian Leadingham, an owner of Lone Cypress Logistics. They focus, they're heavily based in produce. And he gave a great tip. During the Super Bowl, avocado shipments skyrocket because everybody wants guacamole. And those avocados are very ripe, right? So there's an opportunity to slide in there. Like you said, it's the fire drill load. So for brokers that are trying to get in on that stuff, it's got to go perfectly, but it opens the door. And I think what you're talking about, if you want those opportunities, you have to be willing to take a loss.
Because a lot of times, the call that you get, you're necessarily not the first call. They might have called a 3PL and, they're gone in the wind at 5:15. And, so that's the beauty about, I always say I'm always one call or text to the Trust and Freight guy. That's one of my taglines. And, if you've got my cell phone number, if I'm not dead asleep or I'm not dead, I will get it and I will respond.
Ryan, we had a question here from Lorenzo Otto. Let's take a listen.
Hey Levi, what are the most common themes or reasons you see new agents fail or succeed?
I guess this kind of goes along with what we're talking about a little bit, the pros and the cons. But Ryan, from your perspective, what makes an agent successful versus the many agents who try to do this and they aren't successful at it?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of people think that they can do it, and then when they start to see the time and the effort that's involved in getting started, it's just overwhelming. Um, if I had not had the experience that I had prior to tech transport, I probably would have been hesitant to become an agent. And I was actually thinking about becoming an agent when I was at SBC Transport years prior. Every time I made mentions about doing something else, they kicked the can down the road and gave me more money. But it didn't match up to what I was bringing in. So I think people just aren't good enough. They give up. When things get hard, that's when you got to buckle down.
That's right.
And I also think that, you have to be aligned with somebody who's going to support you. I look back on my time at Tech, great company, great owners, but their focus wasn't on agents. I was their only agent. So when I asked for something to be changed on the TMS, for example, to make me more productive, to ultimately make more money, that just wasn't a priority. And that was a big thing with me when I was looking for a transition. Who had the tech? Who's got the vision? Who's got the back office? And, Armstrong checked those boxes. And so
I thought you were going to say Select Transport, but I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna let that go. Ryan, I got to ask you, man. I see this Tive thing sitting behind you. I don't know if that's your sponsor. If you're not watching this and you're just listening, it looks like a box behind Ryan. It says Tive, Tive on it.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. So one of the things that I have done to try to transform myself to get out of my comfort zone. When I started with Armstrong, I had no website. I got a website up and running. I was the old school guy. I was white knuckling the phones. And so I have branched out. I'm doing drip campaigns. I'm doing some things with AI. I have a virtual assistant who's doing all my content. And I think one of the biggest things that is game changing for me that I'm rolling out is this right here. It's called Tive tracking.
And if you're listening to this, everybody, what Ryan's showing on the video, it's like a small blue. It looks like a rectangle, probably about an inch thick, maybe 4 inches in length. What does it do, Ryan?
So this is game changing. So this I ship these all over the country to my customers, and so where my freight's picking up, we activate a tracker. I activate it on Tive's platform, and the customer will stick a tracker on their freight. So now what you've done is you've eliminated macro point. So you've eliminated a driver's inability to set up macro point or
Wow.
bad connectivity. You've eliminated while Samsara and GoMotive are good tools, those are all tools set up by the carrier. So if a carrier is not setting up the pickup and end dates right, if you go into to look up a link where your freight's at and it says the link's expired, that's no good. So this here, you are in control of 100% of the time. In my world, my customers get the link, and there's zero visibility gaps from pickup to delivery now. They can see their freight down to the street. This tracker does a lot of things. It measures light. So when a door opens, we get an alert. It measures shock. So when there's a sudden jolt or freight shows up upside down, you can go to see the time and the place and the location where that happened. And then for anything that's temperature driven, it measures temperature and humidity. And one of the really cool things, it helps prevent fraud. So I have a $250,000 machine that's on its way to Detroit right now. And I have created geofences both to the east and to the west. So the minute this freight goes into the geofence, we will get alerted. Now, that doesn't mean it's being stolen. There could be bad weather. There could be bad traffic. So the driver might have to go into the geofence. But the great thing is you are alerted and your customer is alerted as soon as this happens. So we've rolled out, we've done about 25, I think 20 or 25 we've done so far.
Okay.
I just have another 25 that I just ordered. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to roll this out and get it in clients' hands and just see the ease that this brings to their supply chain. You know,
yeah, and I imagine that, especially, I mean, I have a lot of agents that do like heavy haul stuff. If you have the ability to take a solid margin on something like you're talking about a $250,000 piece of equipment, you can probably just, I don't know what the cost of these things are, but you could probably just build the cost right into the margin itself.
Yeah, that's
and
what I do. I mean, my cost is $73 a unit. That includes the use of the platform and the tracker. These are disposable, non-lithium trackers, so they're good on airplanes. They're good anywhere in the world. I have a couple people that will accumulate them, and when we get 10 or 15 trackers, we'll send them back to Tive, and I'll get a 5% rebate.
All right. All right. So I think this is probably, I'm excited to hear the feedback from other brokers about this product. I've never heard of it before, so definitely excited to see how things go for you with this, Ryan, as well. We'll transition to our last segment here. It's pitfalls and horror stories. Ryan, you definitely didn't just become an overnight success like you're talking about. You've been doing this for a long time. For the younger brokers out there who are listening to this, or those that are trying to get into our world, what is a pitfall that you can talk about that might help avoidance for others?
I think from aligning yourself with the right company, you want to make sure that when you transition your book of business, if you have, let's say, for example, ABC Brick Company, and you have $100,000 credit with them now, you want to make sure when you transition to the new company that you get $100,000 in credit, because it does you no good to be moving to another company if all of a sudden they're only going to give you $50,000. I think another area where you have to do your homework from a transition standpoint is go online and see what carriers are booking loads to this new company. You need to call the carriers. You need to see what the days to pay are with where you want to take your book of business, because you don't want to align yourself with a company that doesn't pay the carriers. Those are two things from a transition standpoint. I think from a business standpoint, you have to evolve and stay ahead of the curve. And what I mean by that is I have done more things in evolving in the last 8 months than I have done in the last 10 years. A lot of things are out of my comfort zone. Some things have not worked. Some things have worked. And you need to be okay with failure and learning what doesn't work, readjusting, and refocusing.
I'll wrap this up with one final question for you, Ryan. What do brokers need to focus on in today's market to be successful?
I think developing relationships. You cannot pick up the phone or send an email or show up unannounced with a handshake, say who you are, and by the way, can I quote some lanes? That's how you did it years ago. You can't do that if you want to be successful in this industry. You have to play the long game. You have to be on LinkedIn. You have to be in it for the long haul to develop rapport and ultimately ways to build trust. You have to be willing to have conversations to find out the pain in somebody's supply chain. When you can find out someone's pain, what their gaps are, then you can feed into that pain. And ultimately, if you are a good salesman good at what you do, you can get a rate that makes money. You all of a sudden don't become a low rate carrier.
Ryan, is there anything you would like to leave with the listeners before we wrap up this week's episode?
Yeah, I think just do everything that you can to try to diversify yourself. If you don't have a website, consider a website. Get on LinkedIn. Develop content daily so that you can interact with people. A recent thing that I just did 6 weeks ago, I started a newsletter. And so we have a newsletter going out to 300 people that are within our customer range. So all my customers are getting something every week around something freight. And it's fairly inexpensive to do. And, you know, it's a great way to get your name out there and give you credibility in the space.
Thank you again, man. Ryan Suydam, aka Suydam Skinny. We're gonna have to do this again. This was a lot of fun.
Hey man, it's great. Thank you so much for having me. Proud of all the stuff that you're doing, and keep on keeping on, my brother.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to tune in next week. Every Monday, 9 a.m. Central Time, we got a new episode coming out. Take care, everyone.